Your ship feels like a floating fortress until you step off in the wrong place and the rules change. Some ports are amazing, but only inside a tight bubble. Wander 2 streets the wrong way, grab the wrong taxi, or stay out too late, and a fun day turns into paperwork and panic. Here are the stops to treat differently. Haiti, Labadee. This one starts with a number, Level 4. That is the highest travel advisory the U.S. State Department issues, and Haiti has been sitting there because of kidnapping, severe civil unrest, and security conditions that have curtailed even embassy operations. There is no softer way to frame it. Labadee appears on cruise itineraries anyway, and the reason is specific. Royal Caribbean leases and operates it as a fully enclosed private enclave. You move from the ship to the property on controlled transport, within a secured perimeter without passing through Haitian territory in any meaningful way. The design of the experience is built entirely around the advisory level. The enclave exists because the alternative does not work. That structure is the only reason this stop can be fine, and it stays fine for exactly as long as you stay inside it. There is no version of just a quick look outside the fence that makes sense here. The advisory is not describing a neighborhood to avoid. It is describing a country-level condition. The boundary of the private property is where your safety guarantee ends, and there's no fast help waiting on the other side of it. It's also worth saying clearly, this is not a reflection of the Haitian people or the country's history. This is about a current security environment that even experienced travelers and aid workers navigate with extreme care. The enclave model acknowledges that reality honestly rather than papering over it, and as a passenger, so should you. Jamaica, Montego Bay, Falmouth, and Ocho Rios. Jamaica is the port that most reliably splits cruise passengers into 2 groups. The ones who had an incredible day, and the ones who had a story to tell with a nervous laugh afterward. The difference between those 2 groups almost never comes down to luck. The State Department flags violent crime, including armed robbery and sexual assault, in tourist-adjacent areas, which sounds alarming until you read the next detail. Tourist areas consistently see lower rates than the rest of the country. Now that's not a loophole. It's the entire logic behind how to visit Jamaica safely. Managed zones are safer because they're managed, and cruise passengers who operate inside them tend to have genuinely good days. The trap is the assumption that the tourist town extends indefinitely in every direction. It doesn't. Walk 2 streets past where the tour groups are clustered, accept a ride from someone who approached you rather than someone you arranged in advance, stay until light fades without a clear plan back to the pier, and you've stepped outside the zone without realizing it. Ship excursions, resort day passes with transport included, and major attractions with visible security all work cleanly here. The itinerary version of Jamaica, Dunn's River Falls, Blue Hole, a beach club with a confirmed pickup, is genuinely beautiful and genuinely accessible. The improvised version is where the statistics start to apply. There's also a specific dynamic at the pier exit that catches people off guard. The moment you step beyond the terminal, the approaches start. Drivers, guides, vendors, all with a pitch and a price. Some of them are legitimate. The problem is that you have no way to verify which ones in the 30 seconds they're in front of you. A prearranged operator removes that decision entirely. You walk past, get in the vehicle you already know, and your day runs on a track you laid out before you arrived. Book something, anything. Just don't arrive and decide. Roatan, Honduras. Honduras carries a Level 3 advisory, and the country earns it. But the State Department's own language draws a distinction that matters for Bay Islands cruisers. Roatan, Utila, and Guanaja are specifically noted as better policed and better resourced than mainland Honduras. The gap is real, and it's why Roatan can be a legitimately excellent day. The issue is what the casual atmosphere does to people's planning instincts. Montego Bay is pleasant from the moment you step off the gangway. The water is right there. Things feel low stakes. and then someone flags down a random taxi to Coxon Hole with no fixed destination in mind, and the day takes a direction nobody planned for. Pre-booked operators with a defined route are the answer. West Bay Beach, snorkeling with a known outfit, one of the wildlife sanctuaries, a beach club with confirmed transport both ways. The specific activity matters less than the fact that someone accountable has arranged both ends of your movement. Point to point, not, we'll see where the day takes us. The other thing worth knowing is that Roatan's tourist infrastructure is genuinely developed. There are excellent operators, well-reviewed beach clubs, and reputable guides who have built their business on cruise passengers specifically. You're not choosing between the ship tour and the unknown. There are vetted, independent options that work well. They just require 15 minutes of research before you board and tender, not a decision made under pressure at the pier. Roatan rewards the version of you that did 10 minutes of planning before boarding. That version almost always has a great day. Belize City. The advisory language here is unusually plain. U.S. citizens should avoid traveling to Belize City. Not exercise caution, avoid. And yet Belize is tendered, which creates a slower, more casual pace of arrival that makes the city feel accessible in a way the warning doesn't support. Here's the thing though, Belize City was never the point. Everything that makes Belize worth a port day is outside it. The cave tubing, Lamanai, Zunantanich, the cays, the Great Blue Hole. Every one of these requires leaving the city, which means the correct approach writes itself. Transfer directly to your tour from the tender. Spend the day at an actual destination and come straight back. The passengers who get into trouble in Belize are almost always the ones who arrive without a plan and decide to fill the time with an unstructured walk near the tender dock, or who wander into neighborhoods that aren't part of any managed tourism corridor while waiting for their group to organize. Now, what makes this pattern so persistent is that Belize City has a functioning downtown, visible commercial activity, and a surface that looks navigable. It reads like a casual Caribbean town. That surface is misleading in a way that the advisory's direct language is specifically trying to correct. The disconnect between how it looks and what the warning says is not an accident or overreaction. It's the accurate picture of a city where the risk isn't evenly distributed across neighborhoods, and where visitors without local knowledge can cross into higher risk areas without any obvious signal. Book the experience, skip the city, and you'll step back onto the tender with stories worth telling. Colón, Panama. Panama overall sits at level 2, which is the standard advisory applied to most of the world. That country level number is where the canal country assumption kicks in, and it's where a lot of cruise passengers make the wrong call. Colón is not level 2 in practice. OSAC reporting describes it as a high crime area with gang activity, and Smart Traveler calls it out specifically rather than treating it as equivalent to the rest of Panama. Multiple sources use the phrase extreme caution. That language is doing work that the country-level headline doesn't do. The canal experience is real, and it is absolutely worth making this stop for. Ship-sponsored canal transits, locks tours with organized transports, direct movement from the pier to a specific attraction and back. All of that functions well and safely. The problem is the passenger who decides that Panama's overall advisory level makes Colón a browsable afternoon. It isn't. The pier is not surrounded by a managed tourist zone, and late afternoon lingering near transport hubs is a documented petty crime pattern. Now, what makes Colón a particularly important case is that it illustrates a mistake people make repeatedly: reading the country number instead of the city detail. Most government advisory pages go well beyond the headline level when you read further. They name cities. They name specific neighborhoods and behaviors. Colón gets named. That's the detail that changes the entire day's planning calculus. And it's the detail that passengers who do 5 minutes of research find immediately. If you don't have a structured plan for Colón, the ship is a perfectly good place to spend the day. Puerto Quetzal, Guatemala. And the risk for cruise passengers here is less about a single location and more about the chain of decisions that builds a day trip. Long-distance drives to Antigua or the ruins, multiple handoffs between transport providers, guides whose credentials nobody checked. Any weak link in that chain creates exposure in a country where the advisory explicitly identifies specific areas of elevated risk. Antigua is one of the most beautiful colonial cities in the Western Hemisphere, and the volcanic highland scenery surrounding it is genuinely extraordinary. This is a port worth leaving the ship for. The question is always how the logistics are assembled. Structured excursions with fixed routing handle that chain well. The guide is accountable. The transport is known. The turnaround is built into the plan rather than negotiated on the ground when you're already 3 hours from the pier. One detail worth adding: the drive between Puerto Quetzal and Antigua passes through areas that are not tourist corridors. It's not a short hop. It's a multi-hour journey through a country with a level 3 advisory, in a vehicle whose driver you may have met 45 minutes ago at the pier exit. That context matters when evaluating the price difference between a ship excursion and a pier deal. The ship's excursion cost includes accountable operators, vetted routing, and a logistics chain that knows where you are. The pier deal doesn't. In a level 3 country, that gap is not a detail. It's the whole picture. Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. The State Department's advisory for Trinidad and Tobago goes further than the Level 3 headline. It names kidnapping explicitly, and it notes that foreigners have been recent victims. That specificity is worth pausing on. This isn't boilerplate cautionary language. It's a description of documented incidents involving people who looked a lot like cruise passengers on a port day. 6 to 8 hours in an unfamiliar city with a hard return time and no local support network is exactly the scenario where that risk profile applies. Downtown wandering, spontaneous detours near nightlife adjacent areas, hailed rides from unknown drivers. Those are the behaviors the advisory maps directly onto. Trinidad has genuine cultural depth. The food alone makes a structured visit worthwhile, and the nature and music history are legitimately interesting. Prearranged transport, a curated daytime itinerary, and a return time built with real buffer. Now that version of Port of Spain works. What the advisory also flags specifically is that certain beaches and recreational areas carry elevated risk at night, and that visitors should avoid displaying valuables. Both of those notes are directly relevant to the cruise passengers who stretches a port day into early evening, or treats a beach stop as a casual downtime without thinking through what isolated beach at dusk actually means in the context of a Level 3 advisory that mentions kidnapping. The improvised version of this port is the one that ends with the kind of conversation nobody wants to have at the gangway. Cartagena, Colombia. Cartagena might be the most deceptively comfortable port on this list. The walled historic city is beautiful, busy, and genuinely easy to fall in love with inside the first 20 minutes. Colombia sits at level 3 for crime, civil unrest, and kidnapping. But nothing about Cartagena's surface suggests that to a first-time visitor. That gap between how it feels and what the advisory says is exactly where passengers get caught. The city has a well-documented scam and theft culture that specifically targets relaxed, distracted tourists. It's not random. The operations are practiced and patient. High-pressure encounters that start as conversations and end as a compromised wallet, phone, or itinerary are common enough that travel security sources treat Cartagena as a specific case study rather than a generic caution. Vetted guides with visible accountability. High-traffic historic areas with a clear plan. Conservative timing that gets you back before the tourist crowds thin. Now that structure works here. The version that doesn't work is the one where dropped guard turns a beautiful afternoon into something else. One pattern worth naming specifically: the friendly local approach. Someone falls into step beside you, starts a natural conversation, offers to show you a shortcut or a better restaurant or a view you'd have missed. It feels organic. In Cartagena, That opening move is a documented setup pattern, not a cultural exchange. Treat every unsolicited approach as a sales funnel until you have a concrete reason to believe otherwise. Now, it sounds uncharitable, but it's protective. Mexican Caribbean, Cozumel, and Costa Maya. Now, these stops look safe, and for most of the day in most of the places cruise passengers actually go, they largely are. That surface normalcy is also what makes the advisory easy to dismiss, and the advisory is doing real work. The U.S. Embassy messaging for Quintana Roo is specific. Exercise increased caution. Violence can occur in any location at any time, and the guidance to stay within well-lit tourist zones is explicit rather than implied. The transport restrictions placed on U.S. government employees in several Mexican states function as a strong proxy for what independent tourists should avoid. For cruise passengers, the risk profile is almost entirely behavioral. The daytime beach club is fine. The C-Note tour with a vetted operator is fine. The Mayan ruins excursion with dispatched transport is fine. What introduces risk is the series of small decisions that pull people off that track. Walking downtown after the light changes, waving down a taxi rather than using a recommended operator, accepting an invitation to a better spot from someone you met an hour ago. It's also worth noting that Cozumel and Costa Maya attract a volume of cruise passengers that creates its own tourist infrastructure. Beach clubs, excursion operators, and transport networks that are specifically designed around cruise schedules and safety expectations. That infrastructure is one of the safest ways to spend a port day anywhere in the Caribbean. The risk appears almost entirely when passengers step outside it in ways they wouldn't think twice about at home. Stay in the zones during the hours they work. That is genuinely most of the day at both of these ports, and it is more than enough time to have a great one. The European theft ports: Barcelona, Naples, Marseille. These three don't belong in the same conversation as the ports above in terms of violent risk. They belong in this video because they produce a specific kind of cruise disaster that is entirely common and almost entirely preventable. In Barcelona, pickpocketing and distraction theft are described by OSAC as very common in tourist areas and along the transit corridors cruise passengers use. Thieves work in coordinated teams on Los Ramblas and near the waterfront. In Naples, opportunistic theft targeting foreigners is a documented pattern around transit hubs and station areas, exactly where passengers are managing bags and checking directions. In Marseille, OSAC's France reporting flags coordinated pickpocket groups operating in crowded tourist environments and transit stations, with phones and passports as primary targets. The cruise-specific consequence is what makes these stops worth including. A stolen passport in any of these cities doesn't just ruin an afternoon. It can mean a missed all aboard, an unplanned embassy visit, and a disrupted itinerary for every port that follows. A financial and logistical cascade from one successful distraction theft is significant, and it unfolds faster than most passengers expect. What makes these operations effective is that they don't rely on force or speed. They rely on distraction. Someone asks you a question while another person moves on your bag. Someone drops something in front of you. Someone pushes a map or a clipboard into your line of sight. The moment your attention diverts from your immediate surroundings is the moment the theft completes. It takes 3 seconds. These teams have run the same move hundreds of times in the same corridor, and they are very good at it. The prevention is simple enough that it almost sounds dismissive. Zipped bag worn in front, phone discipline in crowds, no engagement with unexpected approaches from strangers. Move through these cities like someone who has been there before, not like someone reading their surroundings for the first time. The cities are worth visiting. The awareness costs nothing. Safety tips. Most cruisers have safe, enjoyable days at every stop on this list. The horror stories almost always begin with improvised transport decisions or a chain of small choices that felt reasonable until they didn't. The risk multiplier is never the destination. It's the behavior. Every port here has a version that works. These are the rules that make it possible. Treat the terminal like an airport. Everything beyond it like a city you don't know. Leave the pier only with a ship excursion or a vetted operator. Carry one card, small cash, no jewelry, phone away. Use transport arranged in advance, not someone who approached you. Avoid shortcuts, empty streets, and isolated beaches, especially late afternoon. Do not get into a car with anyone who offered help unprompted. Keep your passport on board and carry a photocopy instead. Watch your drink. Decline street drugs. No public Wi-Fi for banking. Set your return time 1 hour before all aboard. Treat it as a ceiling, not a target. Travel with a buddy. Share your plan on board, and if anything feels off, turn around. Know the ship's port agent number and keep emergency contacts saved. Now, none of this is about fear. It's about choosing smart. Every cruise port has pros and cons, and even the rougher stops can be worth it with the right boundaries. Stick to vetted transport, stay in busy areas, return early, and protect your valuables. Do that, and you'll step back on board with stories, not problems. Like and subscribe. Your voyage is just beginning.